More paradoxes. Paradoxes of the Borda count. It is very vulnerable to strategic voting, as I already told you, but there are other problems. It may fail to choose a strong counter-set winner. This is our situation here, with 5 voters and just 3 alternatives. Now, who is the strong counter-set winner? Well, X is supported by a majority, so X is a strong counter-set winner. And now, what are the numbers of points? If X gets 3 times 3, 9 points plus 2, so X gets 11 points. And who may beat X? Actually, this is only Z may beat X. So Z gets 2 points times 3, this is 6. 2 times 3, it is 6, so Z gets the total of 12 points. So X is a counter-set winner, Z is a Borda winner. Now, winner turns loser paradox. The story behind this paradox is very interesting. It was given by Kenneth Arrow in his fantastic book, Social Choice and Individual Values, one of those books that formed the social choice. But he gave it as a bad example to some property, bad illustration. It was a smart example but illustrated something else than he intended to. So there was a long discussion in the 1950s, and then in the second edition of this book in 1960, maybe 3, he corrected this mistake. But the idea is very, very interesting. We have now 7 voters with the following preferences. And now what happens here? Oh, this shouldn't be here. If we apply the Borda rule to those preferences, how many points gets X? 3 times 4, 12 plus 2, 14 plus 4, 18, and so on. If we calculate those numbers of votes, then X gets 18, Y gets 19, Z 20, and V 13. So the ranking is Z with 20, then Y with 19, and then X, and V is the last candidate in this ranking. And as you see, V is the weakest candidate. V doesn't have any chance of getting elected, well behind the other 3 candidates. But now, what happens if this irrelevant weak candidate dies a day before the elections? We have to eliminate V from the ballot in such a case. We cannot have a dead candidate on the ballot. Well, so what happens now? X gets 3 times 3, 9, and 2, 11, and for 13 points, and so on. So for 11 plus 4, 15 points, and Y gets 14, and Z gets 13. So now the ranking is X, Y, Z. X is the winner. The ranking was now inverted. And this is only because an irrelevant candidate died a day after the elections. So this shows also the potential for manipulation here, because we can insert some candidate in the elections, a candidate who has no chance of being elected. But if say if you are Z, if you can convince V, let's forget about him dying or not before the elections, but if you can convince V to join the elections, to start as a candidate, then instead of having this kind of outcome where Z is last, if you convince V to enter the elections, then suddenly you may win those elections. And this is because V takes more points from X and Y than from Z. Z is just it's rewarded actually by V because V appears just after Z, so Z gets a boost of 1 point, while other candidates don't have this kind of situation. So another problem with the Borda count. Actually, if we truncate the Borda count, then we may also get some problems and different results of elections. We are now working, we are still working with the same voting profile with our 7 voters and the same alternatives as before. But now let's define the K-truncated Borda count as a rule such that only the first K alternatives receive some points. So K for the first place, then K minus 1, K minus 2, and so on. What happens now when K is equal to 4? 4 points for the first place, 3 for the second, 2 for the third, and 1 for the last position. If we calculate those numbers, we actually calculated those numbers because this is the same voting profile as before. So 18, 19, 20, 13. And the ranking is Z, Y, X, V. What happens if K is now equal to 3? Well, if we calculate the results, actually the ranking will be the same. And this must be the case, actually, if you think about it. If we just decrease K by 1, this means that everybody will get just 1 point less. So everybody always gets 1 point less, all candidates, 7 voters, so the total of all candidates will be just the previous total minus 7. So 18 minus 7, 11, 19 minus 12, 7, 12, 13, 6. So there's nothing really interesting here. But now with the next truncation to 2, we'll get a more interesting situation. Only those 2 first positions are rewarded. The next 2 positions get 0. So now these are the numbers of points if we calculate the Borda scores. And initially Z was the winner, now Y is the winner. This means that Z and X tie for the second position. And finally, if K is equal to 1, what we'll get here is actually plurality rule. So plurality rule is a special case of truncated Borda count with just 1 position that receives some points. And of course, now X gets 3 points for being the top choice of 3 voters against 2 points for Y and Z. So now X is the winner. So if you want to apply Borda count, Borda rule in some setting as a voting method, it is not enough to say that, okay, we'll use Borda. Because then if somebody else is implementing this method, then this second person may actually, manipulate the choice of the truncation and create a method that is best for whoever this person likes. There's a large scope for manipulation here. All right, now the Copeland rule. The Copeland rule, as you remember, was counting the number of times our alternative was winning against other alternatives. And you would get 1 point for every win. So now the problem is that an alternative that is a winner in 2 districts, may become a loser when the districts are merged. Very weird situation. We have 2 districts here, District 1 with 40 voters, District 2 with 60 voters. In District 1, we have three types of voters. And let's take a look at who is the winner. X versus Z. Well, actually, well, X must be the winner. 21 voters out of 40. X must win against both Y and Z in this district. So it is very simple. The X has the majority of top votes here. So now X wins in the first district. In the second district, we have 60 voters, and now X versus Z. XZ, okay, 40 out of 60, X is the winner. X versus Y. XY, now YX, so X wins only 19 out of 60. Now Y is the winner. And Y versus Z. ZY, YZ, ZY. Well, Y wins 21 of 60, so Z is the winner. So in this district, we have three alternatives that receive one Copeland point. So we have a tie between X, Y, and Z. Now in those districts, X is always a winner, a single winner in the first district, and one of the winners in the second district. But what happens if we combine those districts? We'll have now 100 points, 100 points. And what will be the scores of our candidates in this combined district? X versus Z. 21, 34, no, 21, just 21, 40, 61. So X is the winner, X versus Z. X is the winner. Now X versus Y. XY 21, YX 27, 37, 46, and that's it. So 46 for X, 54 for Y. So now Y is the winner. And Y against Z, 21, 34, and here for 50, 55. So Y versus Z, Y is the winner. If we combine those districts, Y is the winner. Very weird situation, but it also tells us that we just shouldn't use the Copeland rule in those situations involving districts, unless we want to run into this sort of paradox. And now the plurality rule. This is a voting method that is extremely vulnerable to different paradoxes. In the case that we will discuss, we can also talk about the spoiler effects. This is another way of looking at those problems. Two paradoxes. Possible choice of a Condorcet loser and possible failure to choose a strong Condorcet winner. And we have the same example to illustrate those two problems. Now we have those 7 voters, and Z is a plurality winner. And also Z is the Condorcet loser, because Z is the last choice of 4 voters, and also Condorcet loser. And we have a Condorcet winner, X is the Condorcet winner, X wins against the Condorcet loser, of course, and also against Y wins 5-2. So X is a Condorcet winner. Okay, now you can ask, so what? We have already talked about the failure to choose a Condorcet winner, such properties, but is it really important? Well, this is our example that I already told you about the Chilean presidential elections in 1970. These were extremely important elections in Chile and for the entire world, because the Soviet Union at that time wanted to enter Latin America, and the United States was defending Latin America against Soviet soft invasion. In those elections, there was a battleground for KGB versus CIA. They were extremely active in those elections. Salvador Allende was the communist. He was a communist, the head of Popular Unity Party, with a very extreme program, leftist program of nationalization of Chilean economy. And then there were two candidates, center-right candidates, strongly opposing Allende, Alessandri and Tomic. And they were unable to cooperate and to choose one of them to compete in those elections, and then decided to compete jointly. And the Chilean electoral system for presidential elections was such that if there was a majority winner, then this was the winner. If there was a plurality winner, then the two top candidates would go to Congress, and then the Congress would decide who would be the winner. But the Congress essentially didn't want to be involved in such decisions. And the Congress, there were such situations 3 times earlier when there was a plurality winner but not a majority winner. And the Congress always said, okay, we are not interfering. And the same was this time. Allende got 81% of votes in the Congress, in Chilean Congress. So essentially the rule in those presidential elections was plurality. And now see what happens here. The candidate with just 36% of votes was the winner. And against him, there were candidates, very similar candidates with 35 and 28% of votes. So it is very likely, or we can be sure, that any of those candidates would have beaten Allende in the second round, in the round of elections. So Allende was Condorcet loser, the Condorcet loser. Alessandri was probably the Condorcet winner. Clearly, one of those two candidates, the one who would win in pairwise voting, would be the Condorcet winner. So we have the situation exactly like here. Plurality fails to choose the Condorcet winner, but it chooses the Condorcet loser. And now what happened in Chile was that a Condorcet loser became a legal president. There was no issues about him being illegally elected. He was a legally elected president. And at the same time, he was a very weak president. So he was a legal president and an extremely weak president. Against him was the Congress, the majority in the Congress, the military courts, the majority of population. And he started his very aggressive, extreme reforms. He nationalized large parts of Chilean industry. This generated huge tensions within the society. This is a horrible, horrible combination, legal and weak, because then after 3 years, it generated basically General Pinochet. It materialized, those tensions were materialized in the coup d'etat in 1973. General Pinochet took power. There was a lot of blood spilled. And Chile ceased being a democracy for 16 years. Then in 1989 were the first elections after this coup d'etat. We'll be talking about those elections because they are also very interesting. But you see, this is such an innocent property. Failure to choose a strong Condorcet winner, choosing a Condorcet loser. And this property in the real world can be translated into something incredibly important.